we look around the industry and we're, I mean, for lack of a better word, horrified about what we see in terms of, involvement of hedge funds or anybody who maybe is interested in the business for a purely business standpoint. The Daily Gazette has about 200 employees altogether. It's a mix of part-time and full-time. We still have to, pay attention to the finances, but we're also exploring other avenues, and we're not alone in this, about finding ways to pay for reporters and staff members through various grant money. Right now, we're in discussions with a few different philanthropies. So we're looking at all these kind of models that might help. We're going to do it as long as we can do it, and we're going to try to, do it independently as much as possible.
The traditional media forgot two things in the last 20 years. First of all, they forgot that their content is valuable, and therefore, if it's valuable, they should not be giving it away for free. Once you give it away for free, you become solely dependent on advertising, which brings us to the second problem, which is if you're solely dependent on advertising, the most important thing is to have some catchy or deceptive headline in order to get a page view.
Capitalism makes news deviate from their mission. Under successful democratic times, the news is boring. People are making concessions. One group wants this, another group wants this. The politician says, okay, everybody can have half of what they want. No one's going to turn on the news to watch that. There is no money to be made in straightforwardly doing your democratic job.
And it's only $4.99 per month. Now you can watch One America News Network live, anytime, anywhere in the world. Go to our Facebook page and click here to become a supporter today.
One of the things about the architecture of the internet is that it provides a series of spaces for content creators to monetize not only the content that they create, but also the visitors that they bring to those websites.
But if this bill were to pass, would this prohibit the sale of the Bible that teaches these things about sexual morality?
Well, literally, according to how this law is written, yes, it would.
The misinformation factory model is so successful because it can be easily replicated, streamlined, and often requires very little expertise to operate. Meanwhile, legitimate local news organizations, which often rely on similar ad-supported infrastructure and industries for their livelihood, are suffering.
So oftentimes, a lot of the hyper-partisan social media pages and sites that portray themselves as news-like, but are actually just pushing disinformation, are able to use social media to bring people to the website, which then brings them money through paid banner advertisements that are usually programmatically placed by big ad exchanges like Google.
The structure of the social networks controls what information you have access to.
People who get into it for political reasons can make it much more of their career because of the financial prospects that are often involved.
Sometimes what you really need is just good investigative journalism, right? A lot of these campaigns are exposed by investigative journalists and by the media, and what they've done is to follow the money, is to pick up the phone, is to try to understand who's really behind something.
I 100% support everyone's right to free speech, but freedom of speech doesn't mean you're entitled to profit from that work. We've entered an era where brands don't know where their ad dollars are going.
When a brand purchases an ad with Google, it uses an algorithm based on keywords to target consumers. However, sometimes these ads can be placed on websites that are unfavorable without the brand knowing.
There was a study that came out earlier this year from the Global Disinformation Index that found that $235 million every year is going to fund disinformation. Each dollar that's going to fund disinformation is a dollar that is not going to fund legitimate sources of news. And that's really problematic. The other thing is that brands never asked to be on disinformation sites. So how is it that that much money is going towards disinformation? There's something up. I went on Breitbart news, Breitbart.com, for the first time after hearing about it throughout the election cycle. And I wanted to see for myself what this website was about. And when I went on the site for the first time, I was shocked to see ads for brands and companies that I shop with, that I frequent, that I'm a customer of, advertising on this website. And I had a hunch, a very strong feeling, that they had no idea they were on this website. So I started by writing a Medium article, like just a blog post online, bringing attention to the fact, and that's how I met my partner, Matt Rivets, who had already started an account a couple weeks before called Sleeping Giants. We would just take a screenshot of their ad on Breitbart. We would just tweet at them with that screenshot saying, "Hey, did you know you're appearing on this racist website?" And it really was just a question. It turns out nobody knew. Not a single brand was aware that their ads were appearing on that site. But almost across the board, they were horrified to find out that they were. So we generally got responses pretty quickly. Brands would just, it was Twitter, so they would just respond to us saying, thanks for letting us know, we will be sure to take it down. Breitbart lost 90% of its ad revenue within 3 months. It hit them really hard. We had no idea we were that effective. What we did know is that brands were slowly sort of waking up to where their advertising was going. When they sign up and turn on their Google ads or their Facebook ads, those companies have promised them that they will not serve their ads on any website or any publication that is objectionable or hateful. And they've really reneged on that promise. With Breitbart, that was the first time that a lot of brands understood this. But what the bigger problem here that I see is that there's hundreds of thousands of more Breitbarts out there that tech companies are not doing anything about, that they're not paying attention to. And unfortunately, a lot of brands still don't understand just how massive this problem is.
I think on a more structural level, this is about freedom of speech versus freedom of reach. Do you have the right to say something online? Sure, one could argue that. However, do you have the right to monetize and amplify it by breaking the rules? That is an area that I think that we can make significant progress on.
We have a lot more power than we did 5 or 10 years ago. Consumers need to understand that we can make that difference just by speaking up.
There's definitely this tension in the United States between the freedom to access and publish information and the desire to have, the issue of made-up news somehow be addressed. And there's a real tension that exists there. And in most cases, when we asked this, the public did not want the government to take these kinds of steps if it was going to be a risk to the freedom to access and publish information. They were more willing for technology companies to do so.
This program is made possible with support from Connecticut Humanities.